As you probably recall, a former Trump White House aide, Cassidy Hutchinson, became front-page news with her damning testimony before the House committee investigating the events of January 6th. She also became a target and largely vanished from public view until now. She's talking with our Tracy Smith.
So you were in hiding? You are in hiding?
Were/are/coming out of hiding.
For Cassidy Hutchinson, the past 2 years haven't exactly been a day at the beach.
Like, I go out in limited capacities, but part of it is for security.
She's basically been off the radar since that day last summer when she found herself in the eye of a political hurricane.
The whole truth and nothing but the truth.
Only one witness, and she is potentially a blockbuster. Cassidy Hutchinson.
In June 2022, Hutchinson, then 26 and a former senior advisor to Trump Chief of Staff Mark Meadows, testified before the January 6th committee, and she didn't hold back.
As an American, I was disgusted.
Her position as an aide who worked only steps from the Oval Office seemed to make it all the more powerful.
We were watching the Capitol building get defaced over a lie.
But reports of security threats afterward drove her into hiding.
So my life changed in the way that I was living my life for a while.
You couldn't go back to your apartment.
I could not go back to my apartment. I ended up moving down to Atlanta for several months.
They didn't even think it was safe for you to stay in D.C.
No. And,
such a thing would have been unthinkable only a few months earlier. Hutchinson was a Trump loyalist from New Jersey who'd worked her way up from a White House internship to a spot as one of the higher-ranking aides in the West Wing, with access to the Chief of Staff and often the president himself.
I was the conduit to the White House Chief of Staff. Pretty much to get to him, you had to go through me in some capacity.
Did people trust you?
I would think so. When I worked there, people did trust me.
But the events of January 6th left Hutchinson shocked and disillusioned. In the final days of the administration, she was fired. But as a former White House insider, she was subpoenaed by the January 6th committee, and she started talking in a series of tape depositions.
I felt torn a lot of the time because I knew what I knew and I wanted to come forward with what I knew. But at the same time, I didn't want to feel like I was betraying them, and I didn't want to feel like I was betraying my colleagues.
As Hutchinson writes in a new book, published by Simon & Schuster, which, like CBS, is owned by Paramount Global, her first attorney was paid by a Trump PAC, and she says she was advised that the less she remembered, the better.
You're kind of caught here. You're starting to have this moral dilemma. I mean, you looked over the transcript and you counted the number of times that you said, I don't know, I don't recall. I mean, you said, I don't know and I don't recall more than 100 times.
Yes, in the final transcripts, it was written with I don't knows and I don't recalls, which was information that I very clearly recalled.
So, as she struggled with the thought of betraying her coworkers, Hutchinson started Googling another landmark D.C. hearing, Watergate, and found Alexander Butterfield, the former Nixon aide who revealed the existence of the White House taping system and helped bring down a president.
Mr. Butterfield, all of the president's conversations in the offices mentioned and on the telephones mentioned were recorded. As far as you know.
That's correct.
Butterfield's story became her beacon of hope, and the Bob Woodward book about him, The Last of the President's Men, became her Bible. She usually keeps her well-worn copy close at hand.
And he really was the source of strength for me and gave me the perspective that not only that I could do this, but that there was life on the other side of it.
And so, armed with a newfound conviction and new attorneys, she headed up to Capitol Hill and into history.
Did you want to back out at any point?
Oh, yes. I almost ran out of, there's the little hold room outside the committee room that we were about to walk in, and I almost started.
Even then, close to it, you wanted to run away.
I heard the door click open, and I turned around and I looked at my attorney and said, I can't do this. And I started to walk, and he gently pushed my shoulders, and he said, "You can do this." And then we walked out. When I returned to the White House,
Among the more explosive moments, a story she says she'd heard from the White House Deputy Chief of Staff, Tony Ornato, about a January 6th incident with Secret Service agent Bobby Engel in the presidential limousine, nicknamed the Beast, where the president was said to have insisted on being taken to Capitol Hill to join his supporters.
the president reached up towards the front of the vehicle to grab at the steering wheel. Mr. Engel grabbed his arm, said, "Sir, you need to take your hand off the steering wheel." Mr. Trump then used his free hand to lunge towards Bobby Engel. And when Mr. Ornato had recounted this story to me, he had motioned towards his clavicles.
Both of these men say they don't remember this conversation happening. How can you explain that?
I know what I recall. In this particular instance, I can't climb inside the minds of Tony Ornato and Bobby Engel. Maybe they truly don't recall this happening, but for me, I stand by what I testified to in that incident and in any other incident that had been disputed.
These are Banana Republic indictments. These are third world indictments.
In an interview last week, President Trump himself weighed in, disputing her account.
Who wouldn't dispute it? She's the craziest account I've ever heard. You mean that I was in the Beast, and she said I was in the Beast, and the Secret Service didn't win. So I took a guy who was like a black belt in karate and grabbed his neck and tried to choke him.
What happened?
How ridiculous.
You admit in the book, you've admitted here that you told less than the truth, that you lied. Why should we believe you now?
Because what would I have to gain by coming forward? You know, it would have been easier for me to continue being complicit and to stay in the comfortable zone of, I had some sense of security, a semblance of security. I knew people that I could easily reach out to for jobs. I had friends.
Have you talked to either Tony or Bobby since?
I have not. I have not talked to many people in the Trump world since the day of my testimony.
Hutchinson's book is full of anecdotes about her time in Trump world, including a detailed account of Trump attorney Rudy Giuliani groping her. Giuliani's team calls it a disgusting lie, but Hutchinson stands by her story, as does her publisher. She was also among the witnesses who testified for the federal grand jury in Washington and the grand jury in Fulton County, Georgia. It's not clear how much impact her testimony had on the subsequent indictments of the president and his associates. But there was someone watching it all with special interest. The man who helped inspire Hutchinson to come forward, Alexander Butterfield, is now 97 and living in Southern California.
And Haldeman was a pal of mine.
And she's been able to thank him in person.
Now we're lifelong friends.
Yeah. Well, more than friends we are, yeah.
Cassidy Hutchinson says that while her life and her heroes have changed, she's still a Republican.
Are you backing someone yet in the 2024 election?
For starters, I would like to make clear, I would not back the former president of the United States. He is dangerous for the country. He is willing and has showed time and time again willingness to proliferate lies and to vulnerable American people so he could stay in power. To me, that is the most un-American thing that you can do.
I want to begin by thanking Ms. Hutchinson for her testimony today. We are all in her debt.
Alex Butterfield said he'd do it all over again. Would you?
I would. I don't think I would really change anything. You know, I got to where I needed to be, and I'm proud of the work the committee did too, and I'm also very grateful that they were willing to listen, and that America was willing to listen too.